We're
Yeah.
welcome back to Talking Pictures.
You're rolling with it.
I'm rolling with it.
He's rolling with it.
Finally have a name. After how long has it been? What
This is
episode
the
is this?
fifth one, so it's been a month.
A month, and we finally have a name, Talking Pictures. So welcome back to Talking Pictures. It's me, Tawana. I'm here with my... I don't want to call you host.
Yeah,
I don't want to say co-host.
Too official.
Yeah, it feels weird. I'm here with Max.
I'm Max. I'm here.
And this week we've got your choice.
The Third Man. Carol Reed directed it. Who wrote it? What's his name? Some old man. Graham Greene. Graham Greene. Yeah, I chose this movie as... so, Talking Pictures. To briefly elaborate, the name came from... I feel like this is kind of becoming a conversation of movie, then movie. Each movie is a tit for tat, something that leads off of something that we feel about it into the next one. Bugsy Malone made me think about noir movies, and I said, okay, what's a noir movie that I would like? Well, there's a lot of great old noir movies. I really like a lot of old movies. That's part of what I grew up watching. So what's a good one to pick? The Third Man. That's probably a good one to talk about. I've only seen it once when I was like 15, and I haven't seen it again until this morning when I watched it. But that's probably a good one to pin a whole episode on. So this was a bit of a gamble. This was a bit like, I'll bet that's going to be a good one to talk about. I think it was.
Okay, I will admit,
Yeah?
because I did the same thing last week with Bugsy Malone. Because I'd seen it as a kid.
Yeah.
Looking back, when I was watching, I was like, it's not the same. It's not the same because I watched it as a kid.
I'm very glad I watched Bugsy Malone.
No, I think it was good for you to get a chance to watch it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a unique film, but just because I feel like when you've seen something as a teenager, you, or even as younger than that, you watch it with rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah.
And when you look back on it, it might not be as good as when you first watched it at that age, especially if it's been a long period since you've watched it. But this is still good.
It's pretty darn good.
It's still good. The first time you watched it as a teenager?
Yeah.
How old? You said 10 years ago, so you were...
I think I was about 15, maybe even 13 or 14 when I watched it the first time.
And what did you think then? And did it change how you think about it now?
I remember enjoying it then. It was also right at an age where I was becoming less interested in old classic movies. Partially because I was just getting exposed to more movies and I wanted to see what some of the more modern things going on were. My dad raised me on classic movies from a young age, so I was used to them. But I was also just, getting interested in different types of movies and the different types of genre and comedy that evolved over time that just simply didn't exist in the medium of movies back in the 40s or 30s. So I think I enjoyed it, but I think I was a little disinterested in it, and I definitely didn't really understand how to watch movies back then. I wasn't awake in movies yet. I knew I liked them, but I didn't understand why I liked them yet.
Okay. And now?
Now,
Are you awakened?
I think I have a pretty good grasp on how movies work and what makes them work and how to watch them with a critical eye. Because I watch a lot of movies. We watch a lot of movies.
Yeah.
This time around, I really enjoyed it. It was exactly the itch I wanted to scratch, the scratch to the itch that I had. Something about an itch. You know what I mean. It was exactly what I wanted out of a noir.
The itch that needed to be scratched.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly what I wanted out of noir. So the reason I thought Bugsy Malone starts off with that kind of noir PI narration.
Yes, it does.
Thing. But it doesn't really focus too heavily on that. It's more of this gangster plot line. And the movie kind of flirts with tropes of noir movies with shadows and lighting and things like that. Bugsy Malone flirts with that, but never really commits to it fully because it's doing its own thing. It's this kids thing. It's this musical thing. So this movie was just like, yeah, put it in my veins, give me that fucking fix. All the shadows, all the Dutch angles, those tilts, the intrigue, the web that you try to follow down, but you can never really figure out what the hell is happening. Oh, it's beautiful.
And this is in black and white.
Yes.
Because last week I said Bugsy Malone was in black and white. But this is the reasons, because when you watch films like this, you just think black and white.
Yeah.
But yeah, the shadows. It was the aesthetic. I think we should. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back.
Okay.
Because the story, I think you explained this better, what the story is.
Okay.
Just the brief gist.
Brief gist. What's his name? Holly Martins, a dime store novelist from America, has just landed in Vienna, post-war Vienna, 1949, is when the movie came out. I think that's when it takes place. He's there to get a job from his friend Harry Lime, but Harry Lime has just been killed. He's been hit by a car, and he's dead. And so now Holly doesn't know what the hell to do. He runs into a few people, goes to Harry Lime's funeral, starts asking questions, and finds a few loose threads that make it seem like people aren't telling the truth about what happened to Harry. And so Holly starts pulling on these threads and digging himself down this rabbit hole, gets involved with a dame, a no-good femme fatale dame, gets involved with a local cop who's also working his own case, and numerous other characters as we spiral into this look at sort of the morals of living in a post-war world.
I'm going to apologize because I'm about to say something so insensitive.
Uh-oh.
But this film reminded me, don't trust these hoes. That's so insensitive. And you can block that out afterwards in the editing. But you shouldn't fall in love with actresses.
Sure. That's
Shouldn't fall in love with actresses.
I think many actors, or actors and actresses alike, could be difficult people to have a very close, intimate relationship. We have a lot of stuff going on.
We'll get into why I feel like that as we go along with the different things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
But this was my first time watching this.
Okay.
And Orson Welles is in this film.
Orson.
I've never seen an Orson Welles film.
No, you haven't? Oh, wow.
Which means that we need to watch Citizen Kane.
Yes.
But one of the things that I loved about this film is, and you mentioned it before, which is trying to figure out what is actually happening, trying to figure out the mystery. And one of the things that I love about it is that I didn't know what was going on. Because as soon as you thought one thing, then something else would come up and you go, oh, shit. And I loved the performances. The guy who played Holly Martins.
Joseph Cotton.
Joseph Cotton. He was fantastic. And it was, you know, it came out in 49. When did Streetcar Named Desire come out?
Ooh.
I feel like it was the 50s.
Streetcar... Maybe it was the... I feel like...
Is it still in the 40s?
I feel like it could have been 40s still.
But my whole point of bringing up Streetcar is to bring up Marlon Brando. Because as I was watching this, I started thinking about this whole introduction of method acting.
Yeah.
And the revolution that sort of happened. But then I'm looking at these performances and I'm like, these are fucking fantastic performances.
They're fantastic. They're not method at all.
They're not.
It's not a realistic style, but you feel it all the way.
And he has such a... And I hate this word when it comes to acting, sort of describing it, but there's a naturalistic, casual style that Joseph has when he portrays Holly. And because he's the main guy and you're sort of following him as he's trying to figure out this plot, there's something like when he's deceived, and there were moments when him and Anna Schmidt, there were just these little moments, especially early on in the beginning, where you just see them look at each other, and you'd be like, oh, there's something going on here. Like the tension was so palpable. Like the chemistry was so insane between the two. The casting is fantastic. I wonder if they had a casting director or if the Carol Reed, the director, casted himself. Oh, fun fact about Carol Reed.
Yeah?
So it's Sir Carol Reed.
Oh, sir. Apologies, sir.
His nephew is Oliver Reed, who's he plays the guy in Gladiator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oliver Reed. Huh.
His father is Herbert Beerbohm Tree.
Mr. Tree himself.
Mr.
Wow.
Tree himself.
Anyone listening to this is probably going to have no idea what we're talking about, but we've heard a lot about Mr. Tree.
We have a close connection to Mr. Tree.
Yeah.
Which it still gives me nightmares to this day. But I just found that interesting as I was looking up the film.
Fascinating.
But going back to the cast, Anna Schmidt and Holly Martins, those two characters, they're caught between this web of what happened to Harry. And both of them don't really know. Anna was in love with him, like deeply, sadly, and could I even say pathetically in love with him.
To an extent, yeah. I mean, the ringer that Harry puts her through by the end of the movie, and she's still unwaveringly.
Which I can respect. I love a Ride and Die.
It's beautiful.
I love a Kimmy. But there was a certain point where I was like, gain some self-respect. But the actress, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Alida Valli.
That sounds right, yeah. Alida Vai, or Valli or Vai, I can't remember.
No idea, we're not Italian.
No.
But she's an Italian actress.
She's Italian, okay.
And which you wouldn't know because her English is pretty good.
Her English is good, but she's also playing a Czech character who is masquerading as an Austrian, so it's
quite an interesting role to play.
Yeah.
And at the beginning you find out, it's set in Africa and they had the French, the Americans, the Russians, and the Brits all occupying Austria. That's important for later on in the film.
Yes.
Because when it started, when Harry arrived and he was talking to somebody at the train station, and I heard an American voice, I was like, is this set in Austria and everyone's gonna fucking speak English? Because I hate when something's set in a specific place and everyone just suddenly, is magically speaking English.
Sure.
But you don't really have that. Some characters speak English, yes, but for the most part, the characters who are from Austria, they speak, is it Austrian?
Austrian, German,
Russian, maybe? I don't know.
I think it's German. It's probably like a regional dialect of what we would call German. This probably, sorry to any German or Austrian listeners.
And
Austro-German, German. We'll say it's German.
You were gonna say it's the same thing, weren't you?
I was gonna say it's the same area. It's the same ballpark.
Yeah, that's extremely offensive.
Probably.
But we are deeply sorry. We are not educated enough to know the difference between what Austrians speak.
I feel like I know, but I'm just second guessing myself now because I'm on air.
You went to Austria. That's the weird thing. You've been to Austria.
Yeah, but that was like South Austria, and so they were definitely speaking their own specific regional dialect. It's German. It's German.
German, Austrian, No idea. But there's as you go along the plot, you meet several characters, and one I particularly want to pick out
Yes.
because he's in the film, and he's sort of early on. You sort of think like he's the bad guy,
Okay.
which is Major Calloway.
Calloway, not Callahan. I'm British, not Irish.
And the only reason I'm saying you think he's the bad guy because he's sort of in the way of Holly.
Yes.
Trying to solve this.
He's very sort of smug, and he's like, you know, a very RP British guy. So there's just a bit of an association of like stuffiness to him, the establishment to him.
But as you go along with the story, and this is why I actually loved all the actors' performances, is that you get the bigger picture
Yeah.
of what is actually happening. Even now, when I think about it with Anna, you know, the love that she had, when you think about what Harry did for her, because she's Czechoslovakian, and the Russians have this rule that what is it specifically? If you're part of the Russian family, you have to come to Russia.
I can't remember. I guess Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, was under Soviet rule then. I know that Czechoslovakia was under a dictatorship of its own around then.
Because she has a forged German passport.
Yes, so she was found illegally in another country, then they would deport her back to her own country, where life would not be nice.
And this is just post-war World War II.
Yes, just a few years after the war, when... So this is like the same time that East Berlin is getting occupied, but I think before the wall went up. So it's that time after World War II when everyone was still figuring out what the hell was going on.
And you kind of feel like that as you watch it. I sort of the production design throughout the whole film. There's something where you feel like it's the end of the wall, but there's like this feeling of people don't quite know which direction they're moving in.
No, there's several chase scenes in the movie, and we get this wonderful tour through the city of Vienna, through the grand cathedral, there's old history to it, and through these lush, extravagant hotels, but then also past bombed out buildings and apartments. And
yeah.
piles of rubble. And the chase sequences are all very kind of scattered, and they bounce between angles and flip the 180 rule a bunch of times so that you never quite know where you are. You just know that you know who's ahead of who because the way it's shot, because it's very much you shoot this one guy and then you shoot the guy following him, and then you shoot him again, and then you shoot the guy following him, catching up in that same location, and it's very clever and economical, but it means that you can play around with that and just twist the whole geography of the place around.
Yeah, and I really liked certain locations where you could tell that this place was bombed.
Yeah.
It's not specifically said, but you can see it. You can see it with the ruins. You can see there's a part where Harley's being chased, and he hides in like this burnt car in this rubble underneath. And he's like holding on. And just that location, just that shot, you just go, oh, I know what happened here.
Yeah.
You just know. They don't even explicitly say it, but you just know. And I love that touch to the film. And you have the funeral. And what were they throwing? I thought because it's in black and white, you can't really see the color to anything.
Yeah.
But is it dirt or is it salt?
I think it was dirt.
Okay, because they have the spoon and they're throwing it.
Yeah.
But at the funeral of Harry's funeral, you see Harry, you see Anna, you see Major Calloway.
Calloway's watching from afar. You don't quite know what his deal is. He's dressed in this very large leather trench coat, which is very suspicious looking.
And there's certain points when Carol Reed does this thing where it's like a close-up of different characters.
Yeah.
And it's like they're watching Holly.
Yes. Several times throughout the movie, it's just these glances from the underworld of Vienna, just looking over at him from all angles as he travels throughout. And so you always get this kind of seedy feeling of everyone's out watching. There's a world out there that you're not a part of that's watching you.
And the world is so corrupt. Nobody trusts the police.
No.
Which was quite interesting because the Austrians didn't trust the normal,
Yeah.
not the main characters,
Locals.
the locals. They didn't really trust the police.
I mean, the police don't even trust each other because there's 4 different branches of police in the city.
And they have their own ambition and their own schemes
Yeah.
going on as well, but for some reason, they have to work together.
Yep.
The British and the Russians share the same building. That I found interesting. Of like, oh, they're opposite each other, but they know they can't trust each other.
Yep.
But then there will be times when they have to work with each other as well, which is an interesting dynamic to have. Like, how can you work with a supposed enemy or potential foe? And it was just those little details throughout the film where you just go, oh, this is a nice little puzzle. Well, not little, but big puzzle
Yeah.
that you're sort of being given crumbs to along the way of like, oh, this is what the world is. And it's vast but intimate at the exact same time.
It's very well directed. The way it opens up is, I mean, first we get the opening credits, and it's this just brilliant shot of like a dulcimer or something, of the strings of an instrument being plucked along to this main title theme, which is this bouncy, jovial, and kind of like taunting. It's like it's sarcastic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, and we're just gonna play this happy song and watch y'all dance along to what we're making you do. It's a great theme, and we see it over the opening credits with the plucking these strings, and then we get the city of Vienna with some classic noir narration coming actually from Carol Reed himself. And he just sets up the world we're in. He says, I never knew the old Vienna before the war with its Strauss music, its glamour and easy charm. Constantinople suited me better. And we see shots of the seedy street crime underworld, people selling watches, people selling their stolen goods. And then he says, I really got to know it in the classic period of the black market. We'd run anything if people wanted it enough and had the money to pay. Of course, a situation like that does tempt amateurs, and we just see a shot of a body floating in the river. And it moves on. And he says, but, well, they can't stay the course like a professional. And he explains the city's divided into 4 zones, the Americans, British, Russians, and the French. But the center of the city is policed by the International Patrol. So that's where the main events of the story are happening. One member of each of the 4 powers, wonderful. All strangers to the place, and none of them could speak the same language, except a sort of smattering of German. Good fellows on the whole, did their best, Vienna doesn't really look a lot worse than any other European cities, bombed out a bit. Oh, I was going to tell you about Holly Martin's an American. And it's just this very casual, fun, slick opening narration that is giving you a great taste of that noir style, but not also trying too hard. It's just being like, oh, I know what I was going to tell you about. There's this dope, Holly Martin's, American, came all the way to visit a friend of his. The name was Lime, Harry Lime. Now, Martin's was broke, and Lime had offered him some sort of job. Anyway, there he was, poor chap, happy as a lark and without a cent. And the train pulls in, and we're on the go. That's the movie.
There's the instrument that plays, it's called a zither.
Zither, sure.
Zither.
I've heard of those.
I didn't know it existed. But it plays throughout.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's got this sarcastic feel to it, especially the first 2 acts. In the 3rd act, it switches. It becomes more somber.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel it because of what's happening in the action of the film. But I wondered, right,
Yeah.
What happened to Harry? Because you meet, what's the Baron?
Baron Kurtz.
Baron Kurtz.
Yeah.
And you meet Dr. Winkle.
Winkle. It's a great. Holly at one point calls him Dr. Winkle, and he says Winkle.
Did you know, there was another thing that happened throughout the film where characters would say the wrong name, like Holly to Major Calloway, who would be like Callahan.
Several people call him Callahan, and he corrects them.
Anna to Holly, calling him Harry.
Yeah.
Winkle. It was throughout. I wonder what that is. Is it like an English thing? You know, like people who don't speak English it doesn't really count because if Holly was doing it as well.
Yeah, I think it's just sort of, it happens frequently, but in different ways, because it's a good trick to set up this sort of shifting world where no one's really sure what's going on. Like with Calloway, the first time it's the hotel desk clerk, I think, and he's got a phone call for him. He says, phone for you, Mr. Callahan? And he says, Calloway, I'm British, not Irish, in this very sort of arrogant British way. Anna keeps switching up with Harry several times throughout because she keeps wanting to imprint Harry onto Holly, and Holly's kind of happy to take that because he's a bit of a dope. He's a bit of a mark.
Did you think that, really?
A little bit. He's got a good heart, but he keeps walking himself, and he even self-admits it, that he's not a mover or shaker like Harry is. He's a writer. He gets followed around, and he falls in love with girls, and and he's someone who's kind of been sidelined in his own life.
Yeah, and if him and Harry were together, you can clearly tell that Harry was the one who got all the women.
Yeah.
He got all the attention.
Right towards the beginning, when Calloway takes Holly out for drinks to get information out of him, Holly says, I wasn't ever so lonesome as before I met Harry. So Harry is a deep, meaningful connection to Holly.
And they've known each other since school.
Yeah.
Which is, you arrive at a new country, which you've never been at, and you've been invited by your friend that you've known for years, and you find out he's dead. I wouldn't know how I would react in that situation. I'll probably leave.
Yeah.
One of the things I was questioning is, why does he feel inclined to investigate this? Is it from a place of, it's my friend, something dirty happened here? Because Holly and Anna have a specific, more Holly has a specific idea of who Harry is.
Yes.
And as they go through the film, that idea gets shredded down, and you start to find out that Harry, see, I'm even doing it, that Harry was actually a racketeer.
Yeah. It's the drip feed of information that Holly gets throughout. And I think it's very important the order that he finds it out in. The first thing he finds out is from the old porter where Harry lived.
Yes.
And the old porter says to him that Harry's friends already left 10 minutes ago. They left with the coffin, and that's how Holly finds out Harry's dead. And the old man is being very sort of, he doesn't speak English very well, so he comes across enigmatic because he doesn't know exactly the words to get across, but it's also just a wonderful little script in setting up this twisted world that Holly's about to find himself in. At one point says, by now it's too late. The old man says it could be too late. They're already in hell or in heaven. And when he says hell and heaven, he switches the down and the up. Mm-hmm. And it's just this very, devilish, twisting world that doesn't make any sense. Very, very Kafka-esque.
there's a moment, a couple of moments of levity throughout the film, but the interactions between Sergeant Payne and Holly.
Oh, Payne.
Payne, who loves Holly's book, he's the only one who knows who he is.
Yeah, the only one who's read, because Holly writes these real shitty dime store novels, these westerns, and he knows that he's not a great writer, but Payne loves him.
But he's invited to do what would you call it?
A lecture.
A lecture.
Mm-hmm.
What was the character called?
Mr. Kriabin, who is the head of basically a propaganda program in
Oh,
Vienna.
yes.
A cultural re-education program, as he puts it, to put on Western entertainment and media for the locals to try to get them on board with good Western ideals and none of these ex-Nazi ideas.
At least he was honest.
Yeah.
But there was the scene where he's giving the lecture, and everyone starts walking out
It's a brilliant bait and switch.
because they're like, "Oh, this guy's just he's not it.
He doesn't know what he's talking
He
about.
doesn't know what he's talking about." There's one question that an audience member asks, which is, "Where do you rank?" Who was the guy? Joyce.
James Joyce, yeah.
James Joyce. Where do you rank James Joyce?
Where do you put him? Where do you put James Joyce?
And even I was like, "What do you mean?"
What the hell does that mean, man?
Yeah. Where do you rank him in what?
Put him where? In a box?
But he's completely out of his depth during that scene.
Yeah.
But it was those little moments of just levity that were just added in there. And it wasn't like, oh, your belly's hurting because you're laughing so much.
Mm-hmm.
It was more like, oh, that's charming type of way. But as Harley's going through and discovering all of this, he goes through it with Anna, who is Harry's girlfriend.
Yeah.
And Anna's an actress. And the first time we see Anna's at the funeral, she doesn't really say much. But this was a great callback because you see this when they're leaving the funeral.
Calloway's driving Holly away.
And is it Payne who turns his head and you see Anna walking?
It might be Calloway that does it, because I think Payne's driving, and Calloway's in the back with Holly.
It's one or the other.
Yeah.
And Anna's walking. And at the end of the film, you see the exact same shot.
Because there's another funeral by the end.
But it's Holly turning his head
Yeah.
and seeing Anna. And I just thought, oh, that's a great callback.
Yeah.
Great callback. I don't know why it didn't. Well, the end shot.
The ending shot is just beautiful. It's. We want to talk about that now, or do we want to get to it? Because there's all the stuff that leads up to it.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it. But Anna is completely distraught.
Yeah.
She at one point she says, "There's no point in living."
She's really, really fucked up about it.
And Holly has no idea that he's never heard Harry speak about her. There's never.
No. He doesn't basically understand anything about Harry's life in this city. I think they've been out of touch for a few years, I guess. And he is thrown through a complete loop at all this.
And she clearly knows something,
Yeah.
which she's not telling Holly. But they both go through this, and they're sort of discovering who Harry was, what he was involved in. Because, my God, when... I think, So it turns out that Harry was involved in this racketeering of penicillin.
Diluting and skimming penicillin from military hospital supplies.
Which meant that any adults, children who were in the hospitals, they wouldn't be able to get it. And Holly doesn't believe it at first.
Doesn't want to accept it, because it's horrible.
But then, see, when I first heard it, I was like, is it that serious? But I'm looking at it from the lens of 2025.
And even then, it can be easy to sort of abstractionalize it. But then we get a scene where, when Hawley himself is questioning how bad this whole thing really was, how far does he need to take this, and Calloway takes him to the children's hospital. And we just see the people who needed this penicillin that didn't get it. At one point, when Calloway's talking about it, about Harry's victims, he says that the ones who got, the ones who didn't get penicillin were the lucky ones because they just straight up died. The ones who got diluted penicillin, that means that they had enough to fight the infection from killing them, but they lived on, and some of them their fever went too high, and the kids basically lost their mind and became comatose. It's been bad for people. It's a fucked up thing.
And the best thing about that scene, when he was showing Holly this, is that you don't see any of the kids. But there's, towards the end of the sequence, you see one nurse at a dot, which is clearly a scale of deaths. And you see another just drop a teddy into a box filled with teddies. And you can just tell, oh, fuck. It's a lot.
Yeah. I'll talk about dots, too. We'll talk about dots. But, yeah. So, do we want... I briefly want to touch on the sort of the way that we get to all this information, because the loops that Hawley is thrown through to get there, it's this twisting, bizarre thing. He gets there, the porter says that he's missed him, the friends of Harry's are gone with the coffin. Then he meets Calloway, who gets him drunk, and Hawley tries to fight him and gets knocked out by Payne, gets taken back to the hotel. Immediately gets swept up because Payne recommends his books to Kriabin, who's on the board of the cultural re-education propaganda thing, gets him hooked up. Then gets a call from Baron Kurtz out of nowhere at the hotel. Baron Kurtz is a friend of Harry's, and so he's going to meet him. We meet Baron Kurtz, who is just an absolute snake of a man.
I don't even know if he's a baron.
You don't know how much about him is real at all through the movie.
Yeah.
Because he rocks up, he's got this cartoonish little chihuahua. It's so suspicious and evil looking. And he's just holding it like a supervillain the whole time. And he's like just smiling like a devil, like this total snake the whole time. And the camera angles, the use of Dutch camera angles, and by Dutch camera angles I mean they're at a slight tilt. But it's not just like fucking Battlefield Earth, which we were talking about the other day, where it's all just a 45 degree. It's like Thor 1, where the tripod's broken, you know? It's just, okay, you put a Dutch angle here because why the hell not? In this movie, it is so intentional. It's the angles range between just a very slight tilt to a pretty extreme one, but then the height and distance of them also changes. So you'll be in a conversation with Hawley and Kurtz, for instance, and it'll be a shot of Hawley, and he's talking, it's at a normal level, it's at sort of table level, so that we see him flat on, but then it goes to Kurtz from behind Hawley's shoulder, and it's up in the air, so it's shooting him from this high angle, and he's low down, and you're seeing like this Kubrick stare of his face tilted up towards, or tilted down towards the camera, so you can't see all of it. And it's from this strange tilt and this strange angle. It's playing with the 180 line. Normally the 180 line, if you have a one-on-one person conversation in a movie, you'll keep the camera in relatively the same place on both sides of them. You don't cross the 180 line because then that creates geographical confusion and it puts the audience out of the location. It messes with our headspace. But this is playing within that line, but it's not being completely symmetrical with it. It's switching it up from moment to moment to keep you guessing, to always keep you off balance when meeting all these strange characters. It's so well done. So Kurtz looks like a devil.
You know, it's interesting. That's one touch.
Yeah.
But throughout the film, you are unbalanced.
Yes.
You don't quite know who's telling the truth.
No. Never.
You're sort of in Holly's shoes of like, I don't actually know who to trust.
Don't know who to trust. Don't know what the facts are. Don't know what the facts you have mean.
Which is weird because I feel like he only. Where is it? What's the word? Connects with Anna because she's a woman.
I think it's two things. It's she's a woman and he's a bit of a dope when it comes to falling in love. He self-admits that. I also think it's because they're the only two people who actually loved Harry.
Yeah.
And she says it at one point when they're talking. They say, she says, I loved Harry, you loved Harry. Look where that's gotten him. Look what we've done for him. Love. Very sort of depressedly. And yeah, because these are the only two people who really are trying to find out what happened, trying to find out what happened to someone they love. To varying degrees of knowledge that they already have, we find out later that Anna was much more aware of this whole insulin or penicillin scheme than we might have thought towards the beginning, because she's a femme fatale dame. You can't quite trust her. Her introduction of one of the other numerous characters that Holly gets thrown into throughout the movie, her introduction is he goes to see her at the theater. After the funeral, that is, her when we actually meet her and she gets to talk to him. We see her at the theater, he goes backstage, sees her backstage changing costume, and says, I was a friend of Harry Lime's, and she turns to him and just says, afterwards. And you can tell that she's distraught about it, this is a serious thing, but then she immediately goes back on stage with this bright smile on her face singing these songs. She can turn on a dime.
As all good actors must. Show must go on. There was another interesting shot. I mean, there's many interesting shots, but
Yeah.
this is when Holly is in Anna's apartment and they're talking, and Holly sort of sat on this ledge and there's a bunch of flowers, and he stands up, and the camera goes through the flowers.
To see the street below.
To see the street below, and you see a shadow, a man standing in a shadow with a cat. And I was like, how did they do that?
It's a brilliant shot. They'll have had to zoom into the flowers, and then it might even be three separate shots stitched together. Zooming into the leaves, and then a shot of like a matte painting of leaves, and then that opens up, and then to the street below. There's some clever camera trickery going on there.
Because if you think it was all in film, that would have taken ages to get it right. And some of the camera positions throughout the film, it's just so fascinating how they managed to work around it and come up with these ideas. Because I would have to go back and see if that shot's been done before.
It probably hadn't been done before this movie.
Because the cinematographer for this film won the Oscar that year.
Makes sense.
And everything you've mentioned with the Dutch angles as well,
Yeah.
you kind of go, yeah, this was pretty special.
It's just really on its game.
But going to how Holly finds all of this out, you then meet Popeshko,
The Romanian.
the Romanian, who was there when Harry got hit by the car.
Yeah.
And it was him and the Baron who carried him. At least that's the story that the Baron tells.
From the road to this statue where Harry supposedly died.
But you find out from the porter that there was 3 men.
A third man. Title drop. Roll credits again, because
Who
they came
was
at
the
the
third
beginning.
man? I never figured that out.
We
Who was-
never find out who the third man was. It's the brilliant thing about this movie. At around just a little past halfway through, the third man stops being important because there's this whole other thing we got to deal with now. It's this great keeping you on your toes. You never really know what's happening. The porter says that there were 3 men who carried him there, and then the doctor that came along later, because the doctor was there, Harry's personal doctor was there, all people that know Harry at the scene of his death. Only people that know him, because it turns out the person who was driving the car that hit him was Harry's personal driver.
And then they also say, some of them say he died instantly.
Yes.
Some of them say he died afterwards.
A little bit afterwards, he was talking to them, saying things to them.
Saying, look after Holly, look after Anna. And you're like, well, what's going on?
Getting a lot of conflicting stories here. The police didn't look this hard into it. He's getting multiple conflicting stories from different people. The facts seem to be changing as he's looking for them. He goes around, he goes to find Dr. Winkle. And when he goes there, Kurtz's weird little dog is there.
Yes.
So we get the impression that Kurtz is there. He then goes back to the hotel where he sees Kurtz in the restaurant playing violin.
And he says that's his day job?
Yeah.
And you're like, but you're a baron?
What? You're a baron? You walk around in this pimp coat with a little chihuahua. What's your deal, man?
And that's the first time you meet Popeshko? Mm-hmm. He's there for some reason?
He just happens to be there.
And it's... Popeshko, the Roman... I don't actually know what his job was. Romanian. I said Roman. Romanian. Two different things.
Yeah.
But he is sleazy as hell.
He gets fake papers.
He gets and he reviews it.
Yeah.
In the first meeting. His name and the police are there. Mm-hmm. That was the interesting... You see the police come in, and he reviews it. Why did he do that?
Because he knows his power. He knows what the police have the power to go after him for. And he's just not really worried. He's got this whole other thing going on. Because even if they went after him, they would have to have proof that he's doing this. And then there would be all this, jurisdictional stuff between all the different police forces in the international zone.
But then he get his man to chase after Holly.
Yeah.
It's a little bit afterwards. But there was a... Is that the moment when... No. The moment comes. Mm. Speaking of the awesome shot of the camera going through the flowers. Mm-hmm. You then find out who's the man in the shadow. Yes,
so several things have happened along the way. This case has been twisted around and we don't know what the hell's going on. Anna's been taken in and arrested, and her passport's been taken by the police because it's clear that she's got some fake papers, but she's been released. She's back in her apartment. This is also after they have gone to question the porter again, and the porter is now dead.
There's the shot where the porter's shouting down to Holly, telling him to come that evening.
Yeah.
And he'll tell him more. And he closes the window, and he turns his back, and he sees someone.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is Harry.
Yeah. Yeah. The porter just freezes like he's seeing a ghost. And so, it's then a great setup for when we find out that the porter's dead. Because earlier, they've been talking to him earlier, and he's been pointing out who was there when Harry died, and he's been talking about, that's when he gets questioned about the third man, the titular third man. But as that scene is happening, and this argument is sort of escalating, because the porter doesn't want to talk out of line because he knows that there's some seedy shit going on, and he doesn't want to get involved, a ball bounces into the room. And a little child pokes his head around the corner.
You know what I was thinking?
Very creepy child. What were you thinking?
I was thinking, not at that point, the point when they find out that the porter's dead.
Yeah.
Because you've got the group of people, the locals, all around, which we'll get deeper into it. But the kid starts talking again.
The kid recognizes Holly from the argument before.
And I'm thinking, why is Holly not questioning the kid? Yeah. Because the kid has probably seen it. It goes back to the Magnolia thing of like the kid's probably seen the thing you're looking out for, and no one's questioning him. That's who you should be questioning.
But that kid, it's a weird little kid, and he's being all taunty, and the crowd immediately turns on him because they think that, oh, so this guy, it sounds like this guy killed the old nice porter man.
But it goes back to that thing of the camera waits. You start to see just individual shot of the locals.
Yes.
And they're looking at him, and they're going, oh, this guy, he killed him.
So they form a mob.
And they start chasing him.
Yeah.
And he goes, is that when he goes back to Anna's?
He runs around a bit. He, I think sees Calloway in between. Yes. All these.
Because Calloway finds out about it, and he tells Holly, listen, I'll help you with the Austrian police if you help me with this.
Yeah.
Which is a great bargaining too.
Calloway holds so many of the cards in this situation.
But I don't like how they just presumed that he was coming from Anna's. He was with Anna.
He was with Anna when they were going to see the porter.
So he's got an alibi. That's what I was thinking, like, he's coming from somewhere, so why just to presume that he killed him?
Well, Anna's not in the best legal light right now either, so she might not hold up as a great alibi.
Man, I know, but still.
Yeah.
But still, I just don't like people being told that they're guilty without any proof. Especially when they got proof that they weren't there. He's just a foreigner, so they just... I don't know, I got things about foreigners. I'm with the foreigners. Shout out to the foreigners. What were we saying? Oh!
The mob of people.
The mob of people chasing him.
Holly runs away. Great chase sequence.
There's something about the chase sequences around this era that it goes back to In the Heat of the Night as well. Mm-hmm. Where, okay, we're looking at it from the lens of 2025, so now we've seen many great chase sequences in our lifetime.
Yes.
But there is something where you go, oh man, like, kind of cute.
It's you're seeing them figure out the medium.
Yeah, of how to do it. Like, how do you do a chase sequence?
Yeah, less film grammar was around then. It hadn't progressed as far as it had now. They had less technology. You couldn't just carry a camera around the streets with you.
Yeah.
It had to be a whole fucking setup.
Especially, like, if you're just planting the camera and you're like, okay, now you just have to run across the street.
Yeah.
And I don't
run
know.
across the street, and then you two run across the street, and
sometimes it's the same street but in different angles that they're shooting it. Yeah. That's why I go, no, this is kind of cute.
it's a bit quaint. This one, I think, does it also very unsettlingly well. Again, because of the way it disorientates you, because it keeps, you're jumping ahead, following one, and then it bounces back to one of the previous streets angles beforehand, and then you keep jumping around. The use of shadows is great. When he's getting chased by the mob, they duck into a movie theater where they split up. But as they're ducking into the movie theater, the little boy, who's been taunting them and singing "murderer, murderer" this whole time, just chanting, comes, brilliant framing, from around the corner of the building on the right side of the frame, and as we see him and his silhouette from the backlit light behind him, he comes around that corner. His shadow extends on this diagonal towards the bottom left of the frame across the street, and also appears on the wall of a building across the street from him. So we get 3 different silhouettes of him. He is 3 different places at once, this little child chasing them. It's just, mwah.
Shout out to the cinematographer.
Oh, it's so good. They've ducked into the theater. They split up. Ollie goes back to the hotel, where a suspicious taxi driver is waiting for him and scoops him up and drives off incredibly quickly. And we think, oh God, what's he getting himself into now? This is what I mean when I say Holly's a bit of a dope. He's a bit naive. He just kind of goes around with anyone.
Yeah, he doesn't have a backbone.
He'll kind of buy anything. kind of because he doesn't want to believe anything really bad's going on. The moment when he considers for the first time that Harry was actually murdered, it's this great moment when he's talking with Anna, and she floats the idea, and he just suddenly turns around 180. He's facing away from the camera and then just turns back, and the title music swells up with that jaunty, and he's just like, what? It's this great moment of, and now the movie's rolling. But he's kind of a dope. But yeah, he gets scooped up in this cab, and it's like something very bad is going to happen, and it's just the lecture that he promised that he would do beforehand.
I didn't like, and this is, I say like as if I'm criticizing the film. It's not about the film. It's just when people or characters just go along. You've just been told, oh yeah, that person's here to pick you up. You're not asking any questions.
No.
You just go along with it. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. You know you can't trust anyone here.
Yeah.
So why are you following this guy?
Wake up a little bit.
Like, come on. Supposed to be American.
Well, he seems like the characters he writes books about. He is a kind of washed out, he drinks quite a bit, he really is in over his head. He's just a writer. At one point, he's trying to get Calloway to focus more on the case and trying to wake him up like, something fishy is going on here. Why aren't you looking into this more? And yes, Calloway says, death's at the bottom of everything, Martins. Leave death to the professionals. And Holly just says, mind if I use that in my next Western? Because it's such a great line, and it sums up that Holly is completely in over his head. And he realizes it, that he's like one of these characters in his books, but he has to keep going anyway. At the lecture, towards the end, the Romanian comes in and asks him, are you working on any new books? And after he's been just fumbling his way through the lecture the whole time, not knowing what he's talking about, then he turns on and he says, yeah, I'm working on one. It's a murder story. It's called The Third Man. I'm still writing it. And the Romanian asks, have you ever scrapped a book idea, Mr. Martins? No. Pity.
Do we see the Romanian after that?
I don't think so. At least not. He doesn't really get a line anymore, because then the situation shifts again.
Yeah, I don't think we see him afterwards.
No.
We see the Baron one more time with Dr. Winkle at the house.
Yes.
But, yeah, I think, yeah, the big reveal.
Yes. So we've gotten hints of it this whole time. At one point, the Dr. Kurtz and the Romanian meet another fourth mysterious man on a bridge somewhere. We see that they've been getting up to stuff. But Holly goes through all this stuff and ends up back at Anna's apartment. They chat. They reminisce about Harry. They mourn him in a way. Holly shows up with flowers because he's been a bit drunk and he wants to talk with Anna. He goes to pet with the cat that's hanging out there, and the cat darts away. And he says, not very friendly, is he? And she says, no, he only liked Harry. And so the cat runs out of the window, and they continue their conversation for a minute. It's very like, okay, we're getting into these two, their history with Harry. Interesting. And then we see this amazing shot through the leaves onto the street, and a guy's looking up at the window, and when he sees there's multiple people up there, he ducks into a doorway. And the scene continues a little bit. And we feel like, okay, we're reaching some sort of closure with this whole thing. And then we see the cat on the street, and it's walking around, and it walks past these shoes in the doorway, and it cuddles up to them. And it's just this brilliant moment when it all sets in. You're like, oh my God, it all makes sense.
That's a great hint. I didn't pick up on it.
Yeah?
I didn't pick up on it.
It's a really, like, blink and you miss it line.
No, but now you've mentioned it. Yeah, I remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like some of the best moments in Breaking Bad or something where you just feel the whole shoe drop. It's like, whoa, here we go.
Because that's after Anna and Holly's leaving, and a car passes.
He's walking the streets. The car too passes. He sees the cat in the doorway with this guy, and he says, "What kind of spy do you think you are, Satchelfoot? What are you tailing me for? Cat got your tongue? Come on out. Come out, come out. Whoever you are, step out in the light. Let's have a look at you. Who's your boss?" And he's taunting him because he's over this whole thing. He's been bounced around all these different sides this whole time. And as he's shouting, a woman upstairs turns on a light to open the window and shout down at Holly, and the light shines right on Orson's face.
And it's Harry.
It's Harry, and the music's playing. And Orson Welles has just got this wonderful little smile on his face, just a tiny little grin.
See, that just... Because throughout the film, up until that point, I was like, where's Orson?
Yeah.
Because I knew he was in the film.
They front load the credits back then, so you know he's there.
I could have Googled which character he played,
Yeah.
but I chose not to.
Oh.
Because I was like, let it play out. I don't know how I missed the line.
Yeah.
No, I didn't miss it. I heard it. But it was the touch with the cat. It was the touch with the cat that I didn't click.
It's a real, it's just a little berry for you to grab onto if
But
if
it
you
was
catch
such a big reveal for me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't click on the cat.
Yeah.
Then I went, oh, fuck. And it flipped me off because I was like, oh, shit, he's alive. Okay, he's alive.
It's all making sense now.
It's all making sense now. And then it's like he faked his death. And then you go, okay, he faked his death. And he goes off and he gets Calloway. He brings Calloway. And Calloway's like, okay, so you saw a ghost. Okay, whatever. And he sort of teases him along the way. But then previously when Holly sees Harry, he chases after him. And then he just disappears in the square.
Vanishes into thin air.
Which has nothing but this, I don't know what you call it, a pole, a post.
This booth.
Yeah, it's a booth that's
Yeah.
got a bunch of posters around it. And Holly gives up. It's like he's disappeared. He must be seeing ghosts. And at which point I was like, oh, he must be seeing ghosts.
Yeah.
I mean, he must be hallucinating or something.
Really Harry? Is it some this guy that looks like Harry? Is he having a full break?
But then when he brings Calloway to investigate, they find out that the booth opens.
Goes down to the sewers beneath the city.
And you're like, oh, he didn't hallucinate.
Yeah.
Harry's actually alive.
Calloway says we should have dug deeper than a grave.
And they go back to the grave to open it back up.
And it's this guy, Harbin.
Who's been mentioned before. Who was, what was he specifically? He was the doctor?
He was an associate of Harry's.
Yeah, but he worked, was it the Brits?
You know, now that I say it, Harbin might have been the one that gets the papers sorted out, not the Romanian. I might have made a mistake there.
Because you see a picture of him.
Yes, he was at the funeral.
Oh my God, I'm actually forgetting what his job was.
The plot is dense, and there's a lot of blink and you miss it moments. Harbin is the one that stole penicillin from the labs that were making it. He stole the penicillin, diluted it. Harry got it into the hands of the people that could sell it off. That's the scam that they were running. Holly asks Calloway, how could he have done it? Because he still doesn't believe his friend could have been doing something this horrible. And I love Calloway just responds, 70 pounds a tube. And it's a small little bottle. It's just like 2 inches tall of penicillin. For 70 pounds back then, in a post-war city, that's a fortune.
But they discover that the guy who'd been missing for the past 2 weeks is actually the one who's dead in the coffin. And then Holly goes off to the Baron and Dr. Winkle. and they ask him to come upstairs, and he refuses because he knows.
Yeah.
He knows these guys will kill him.
He's woken up now.
He's woken up now, but he asks both of them to call Harry, and he's going over to the Ferris wheel.
We'll meet by this big wheel over here.
And when they both meet, I loved this scene.
It's so good. It's a classic. Harry actually shows up, rose up, and he's happy to see Holly, and he's like, Harry, how you been, old friend? Old man. He keeps calling him old man. And Orson Welles' lovely, deep, how have you been, old man? Well,
But then you understand who Harry is.
they get into the Ferris wheel. They start going up and around. Anna's been arrested now. She's definitely going to be sent back to Czechoslovakia by the Russians. And Holly's pleading with Harry to help her out. And Harry's like, oh, well, that's a shame. And he says, what do you want me to do? I've done all I can so far. He doesn't really care. He doesn't really care about Anna. He doesn't really care about Holly. He's checking in on Holly to make sure Holly's not going to spill any more information. How much has Holly said about this? Because he faked his death to specifically get away from this. Get away from all this heat he's got on his back. And he's very clearly threatening to throw Holly out of the Ferris wheel.
It was the speech he gave, which I looked up, and it's the cuckoo clock speech.
They go through all this back and forth. Harry threatens Holly, makes this great speech when they're right up at the top, and they look down at all the dots on the ground. All these people, this wonderful shot of the sun, evening sun, casting their long shadows diagonally across the square. And he says, oh God, I have the quote here. I have it. Okay, yes. He's trying to explain how he could have done this, and he opens the door of the Ferris wheel, menacingly, points down at the people and says, would you really feel any pity if one of those dots stopped moving forever? If I offered you 20,000 pounds for every dot that stopped, would you really, old man, tell me to keep my money, or would you calculate how many dots you could afford to spare? Free of income tax now, free of income tax. Explaining governments have their 5-year plans, he's got his 5-year plan. It's all about getting ahead.
It's when you understand the philosophy that Harry lives by compared to Holly. Holly, Harry, what names, man?
They point out that Holly's got a ridiculous name.
But when you understand the philosophy that they're both opposed by, and you start to understand that Harry's actually a bad guy.
Harry is not a good dude at all.
He doesn't care about Anna. He doesn't care about anybody. You'd think that he cares about Harry, but he really doesn't. He wants to use Harry. Holly. See, I'm even doing it. Yeah. He wants to use Holly.
When he's trying to suss out how much Holly has told the cops about him, we just see this sheer, cold, empty face. All the smile and jovialness that he had before is gone now, and he's just staring at him with these sort of wide, slightly manic eyes, like, how much did you fucking tell them about me? It's a great performance.
And it's how he views people as suckers. And he even mentions that specifically. But see, when that moment happened, you sort of, you go, if you're in Holly's position, you go, oh my God, what I thought about this person was completely wrong. Of which we don't, is it ever mentioned how long they haven't seen each other?
No.
No, it's never mentioned, is it?
No, I think it's, we just feel like it's been a little bit, maybe since before the war, maybe at some point during the war.
But when you don't actually know the person you sort of love,
Yeah.
and then you find out that they're this despicable human being, Harley's left with a decision to make about whether he works with the police to bring down Harry or whether he leaves. And Calloway manages to convince him to help. But then Harley, knowing the game that's being played, comes up with a bargain. Calloway helps Anna. Harley helps Calloway. Of which Calloway agrees, manages to get Anna a passport. They put her on a train.
But he blows it.
He blows it by revealing the truth.
He just had to watch her ride off into the sunset. And no, she sees him and she goes to confront him, and she realizes, she clocks on. She calls him Harry one more time, but she clocks on to what's happened, that the only reason she's in this position is because somebody bargained her out of it, and so she's not leaving, because she still loves Harry, even after Harry refused to help her out of this situation. Could have gotten her new fake papers, could have helped her out in some way. She's still on his side.
And this was the moment I realized, I can't fuck with this.
Yeah.
I can't fuck with her. Because she had a perfect out. And in the scene, I think it's like a cafe.
Yeah.
Or something like that. They're sort of staking it out. Waiting. No, is it the same cafe where they're waiting for...
That's just after this.
No, it's afterwards.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. But she completely blows it off. Oh, for the love of this guy who doesn't actually love her. And that's what, earlier when I said, it's kind of pathetic.
Yeah.
Where you go, oh, honey.
She knows everything he's done. She knows everything he hasn't done. And she's still, this is when she says, as the train has already left, so she doesn't have a way out of there anymore, she says, I loved him. You loved him. Look what we've done for him. Love. And she says to Holly, you should look at yourself. They have a name for faces like that. Just brutally dressing down Holly, who's, again, just, he's kind of a dope still. He's fallen madly in love with this girl. Oh, there's this brilliant line earlier when they still think he's dead. And he's trying to cheer her up, and he's clearly fallen for her. And she knows that, but she's still deeply mourning Harry. He comes real close and says, as she's crying, I'd make comic faces, I'd stand on my head and grin at you between my legs and turn all sorts of jokes. Wouldn't stand a chance, would I? Is that what you were saying earlier? The chemistry between them is just so good. So desperate and so doomed and tragic.
And what happened afterwards is that Calloway comes up with this idea of Harry and Holly are gonna meet in this place, and they're gonna stake it out, and when he arrives, they're gonna jump on him. And Anna arrives just before Harry arrives.
Yeah.
And she's going at Holly. Like, what are you doing? What's going on? And it's in that moment, because you see a shot of Harry standing above, it feels like it's above, because the camera just sort of, it's like his perspective.
Yeah.
And is looking out.
Like he's climbing over the wall of this tower of ruins, looking over the city.
And the camera just pans from left to right to where Holly's waiting for him.
Zooms right in on the cafe.
And zooms right in. And this goes back. It's so beautiful. But then you see Harry come in, and Anna warns him just in time.
Run.
And what I loved about that moment is that Harry was getting ready to shoot Holly. And Anna's the only one who managed to stop it from happening. But pissed me off. Because Anna's just in the way again. Why?
She's trying to help her man. She's trying to help the person
I
she loves.
don't care. He's a bad guy.
But he's got his life figured out.
Listen, okay.
And he's clearly bewitching the people.
I don't necessarily disagree with Harry's speech about why he does what he does.
Yeah.
Because he is right. If the government has its own plan, come up with your own plan.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care. But there is a thing of, because after the train leaves and Anna decides she's not leaving, Holly goes back to Calloway, and he's like, I'm not doing it, just give me a ticket.
Yeah.
You wanted me to leave, everyone wanted me to leave. And that's when Calloway takes Holly to the hospital to see all these people who are suffering, which was great to convince him. Because he didn't need to say much. He was just like, look, this is the damage this guy is doing. And when you see it in real time, you kind of don't have a choice but to just sort of accept it.
And it's when the nurse puts the dot on the board, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
One of those dots just stopped. How much are you calculating to lose?
So I didn't really mind how Holly got to the point of, I say betraying, but Harry's the first one who betrayed him.
Yeah.
And then you have this big chase sequence in the sewers where the police are chasing Harry underneath. And there's so many. He's like a rat.
Yeah.
Trapped.
As he's running away, he's got such a cool exterior whenever we see him, but as he's running away through the sewers, you can tell that he's terrified. Harry is scrambling.
Yeah. And who is it to end up... Well, Calloway shoots him in the back.
After he's shot Payne. Poor Payne.
There's a moment when, after Payne is shot, Calloway goes to check up on him, and I thought, oh, is he checking if he's got a bulletproof vest? Because he was like taking off his shirt.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, bulletproof vest weren't invented at that
Not
time.
back
so
then,
he's
no.
dead.
Payne's dead.
But then you see Harry scrambling, struggling to escape. And Holly follows him. And then you just hear the shot.
Harry, he's trying to escape. All these twists and turns, looping back on himself until just Holly's right behind him. Harry runs up this last final way to get out of the sewer. He sees Calloway's shot him in the back. He's crawling up the stairs. He sees the grate in the ceiling leading out onto the street, puts his fingers through. And we just see from the street level these fingers reaching through the grate desperately until they go limp and collapse, and he's on the ground.
Do you know what I loved about that moment?
Yeah.
So the shot when his fingers are through is completely silent.
Yeah.
Almost like freedom. But then when it goes back to the shot of him, you see in his face, you hearing the sounds. And it was the juxtaposition of those two things, of how the juxtaposition of the sounds that was just interesting to me, of like, oh, the silence, like the freedom that he's so close, but he's not getting it.
No.
And it's in that moment where you go, the choices you've made have now come back to haunt you. The person you decided to become, these are the consequences.
The cage that he's made for himself.
And when Holly catches up, they clock eyes. And Harry just gives him a nod of like, it's okay. You can do it. And that's when you hear the shot. You don't see it, you just hear it.
And you just see Holly walking out of the steam.
And then it's the last sequence where they have the funeral, the proper funeral.
The actual funeral.
The actual funeral. And Anna's there. Holly's there. Calloway's there. They're throwing The dirt,
The dirt, yeah.
which I don't know why they do that. Is that-
It's like it's I don't know the exact tradition of it, but it's so that you can throw part of the dirt and you can help bury this person that you loved, and
Oh,
yeah.
doesn't seem that special.
Not every funeral does it. It's just like a
It would have been made more sense if it was salt. I don't know why.
why salt?
Salt seems special than dirt.
Well, so if you were salting them, that would mean that nothing could grow on where they are, because you're salting the earth.
Yeah, but you're gonna bury them. Wait. Listen, that doesn't matter.
It's symbolic.
And Anna walks off.
Yeah.
Calloway gives Holly a ride back to the airport.
It's just like the beginning.
And it's that shot that we mentioned before. Beautiful shot.
Final shot of the movie. It's, Holly stops the car, gets out, and just says that I gotta talk to her. It just wouldn't be right if I just left. He goes out, leans on a car to the side of the road, and it's this beautiful dead center down the road lined with dead wintry trees. Holly's lounging to the left side of it, lights up a cigarette. Anna's walking straight down the middle of the road, and we see her walk all the way.
Yeah, it's from the distance all the way up close.
It's slow. It's a little bit excruciating because you're like, what's about to happen between the last of them? And then she just walks right past him.
Doesn't even acknowledge him.
And that's the end of the movie.
She hates him.
Yeah, she hates him.
She hates him.
I think she finds him pathetic. Because she even says earlier, she starts making fun of his name and how he's just kind of a fool. Even though she clearly did care about Holly at one point and was feeling something towards him, whether or not that was confused between him and Harry, which it definitely was in part, but no, he crossed a line.
Anything else you want to add?
There's a few little bits here and there. There's some lines, there's some shots. The juxtaposition that this movie does between these two different worlds, between the world above that Harry's trying to reach to, and between the world that he's actually stuck in, the bombed-out Vienna versus the lush, lavish Vienna. Anna's apartment where she's staying, this old woman is the landlady of the place that she's renting from. And as we see her apartment for the first time, she's going up, and it's through this a bombed-out building. It's dark, it's shadowy, it's wet and damp and echoey, and the old woman's shouting after
You know,
them.
when I saw that, I was like, why are they living in this building? It's clearly not fit for purpose.
Until they go up the stairs, and it's gold, and it's marble, and it's the shiniest, most extravagant-looking place you could imagine. And it's literally this city of gold built on top of this city of shadows beneath it.
I wonder if she paid for it or if Harry paid for it.
I feel like Harry helped pay for it. I mean, she can't be earning that much as a side player in the local, not even like the big leagues. She does comedy stuff. She doesn't do tragedy stuff. Holly, she's running over a new song for this new performance that she's working on, and Holly's trying to help her out. And he asks, is it a comedy or a tragedy? And she says, comedy. I don't play tragedy. Brilliant line. Not I don't do tragedy. I don't play tragedy.
Even though she's the most tragic character in the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. Love that. Anything else?
The shots of individual people that we see throughout peering in on him, that is ultimately paid off when it's the setup to catch Harry, and the cops are waiting all around the square outside the cafe, and we get those shots of the cops' faces looking out from the shadows, waiting for Harry to show up. The underworld is even in the cops. Nothing ever quite feels right. And the balloon seller comes and almost blows their cover. Out of nowhere.
Oh, man.
What a funny distraction.
Yeah. The Third Man is a great film.
Before we close all the way out, the Cuckoo Clock speech.
The cuckoo clock speech. Why don't you read it?
Right as Harry and Holly are getting off the Ferris wheel and they've reached a sort of understanding about the situation, Harry's made his case clear and Holly's made his points clear. And Harry's trying to explain why he does it. He gets off and says, in Italy, for 30 years under the Borgias, they had warfare, terror, murder, and bloodshed. But they produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the Renaissance. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love. They had 500 years of democracy and peace. And what did that produce? The cuckoo clock. So long, Holly. Darts off.
I've got... Not even going to get into that.
Yeah?
Not even going to get into that. But,
What do you think about that fundamental idea that strife produces brilliance?
oh yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like the expression, pressure creates diamonds.
Yeah.
Nothing good or worthwhile is created by being comfortable. You kind of need the storm for the flowers to grow.
Sure.
They won't grow if it's just sun. Call that drought
Yeah.
in Africa. Drought.
We have that term in America too.
You've got wildfires though.
Because of the drought.
Yeah. So you kind of need both. I don't know why we got into weather.
I don't know, we needed some water.
But no, it is true. That's why you look back at like throughout history, some of the greatest painters and artists that were around the age that they were in. It was kind of terrible.
Yeah.
And you sort of need, I don't know, maybe that's what's needed to create magic, to create art in that sort of, fairy way of speaking.
Yeah, yeah.
That you sort of need that. You can't, if it's all great all the time, no one feels the need to do anything.
But then there's also the question of how far do you go with it? How far do you use the badness to turn something into goodness? Because Harry's using the badness to turn something into goodness, just not for a lot of people.
I mean, that's... If you're talking about it from, like, individual people's intentions, you never actually quite know if some people do things that are bad necessarily for something good in the end. You never know. But there is a case for when certain people do things that are bad, then other people who do things that are good to counterbalance that. So maybe it's the yin and yang of it all, of the balance of the universe. Just sort of playing out. Or maybe we're just talking a bunch of shit and we don't know shit.
The movie puts you in a very existential headspace.
But like I said, I agree with Harry. I agree with him. I don't agree with the penicillin, but I agree with the speech.
Yeah.
I agree with the whole scene where I'm like, yeah.
It's an interesting philosophy. It doesn't justify what he's done with it.
I don't agree with Holly. I don't.
Yeah?
Number one, I feel uneasy when you're falling in love with your dead best friend's girl.
Yeah. He's a bit of a dope. He's a bit of a sad sack.
And just leave. I mean, there's no movie if you leave straight away, but
No?
if he was real life, I'd be like, just leave, bro. This is way above your pay grade.
Get out of here, man.
You don't want to know what's going on. You've entered a whole other game that you don't know what the rules are.
People are dying left, right, and center.
But yeah, it's a great film. I feel like around this era,
Yeah.
there's a lot of themes. I mean, since Magnolia, besides Magnolia, what have we done? We've done Bugs Malone,
In the Heat of the Night.
In the Heat of the
Cabaret.
Night, Cabaret.
Yeah.
Besides Bugsy Malone, I'd say the others are political
Sure.
in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't, that's not even by design. We haven't gone, oh, let's go with films that are political.
No.
It's just that era, isn't it?
Interesting stories. Interesting, fundamentally human dynamics.
Which maybe you could make a case that that's the direction we probably will be following in the future.
I've got some comedies lined up.
The next film, because I'm suggesting
Yeah,
the next
it's
film.
your pick next. But
Yeah, I already know what I'm picking.
Okay.
It's gonna be political.
Okay.
It's a good political.
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
It's the background. It's around the same era, I think. But yeah, no, it's a good one.
Okay.
It's a good one. I don't know if you've seen it. I'll tell you afterwards.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, watch The Third Man if you get the chance.
Yeah.
It's a great film.
Great atmosphere.
Great atmosphere, great performances, great music.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, what did we call it? The zither?
The zither.
We didn't call it, but that's what it's called.
That's what it's, yeah.
Yeah, the zither.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a zither.
Yeah, yeah,
for sure
like,
zither.
yeah, that's what we call it.
Yeah,
zither.
I think Wikipedia is right on that.
Yeah.
I'll confirm that, yeah.
But yeah, watch it. Watch the other episodes as well.
Check them out.
Like, subscribe.
I'm not going to say that, but yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the second time I've said that.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe.
I mean, we'd want them to do it, but I just feel dirty saying.
Just do it, yeah. Just do it.
You all know what to do.
Yeah, just do it. Like, just like and subscribe and like.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, just hit that like button.
To wrap this up now,
Oh God.
and I guess this has been Talking Pictures.
Talking pictures.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.